There's a great resource out of Chicago called the Illinois Safe School Alliance that has done some great work in Central Illinois, has helped change some of the school things. And so, so it's been a great resource.
I probably should have muted that, sorry. And I dropped it too, that didn't help either. God, I'm clumsy. I actually am very... I think sometimes we just forget that we're still human beings. Yeah, I think it's important that everyone should know their status. Knowing your status is the first step to really kind of having that conversation. I think it's important we learn how to tackle stigma and get rid of it. I think it's such an extremely amazing thing that I get to do this every day and meet such great people and learn their story and share some of their story with the people that watch us every day. To remember to stay hopeful in victory. Good morning, guys. Welcome back. This is Hopeful in Victory Talks, as you can see on my shirt right there. I'm not wearing a purple hoodie today. I'm wearing a gray one. I'm going with the original one. I'm Dusty Line, of course you know that. But I got a special guest with me, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you.
Hi, my name is Len Meyer. I am the Downstate Community Engagement Manager of Planned Parenthood of Illinois, and my pronouns are they, their, them.
Beautiful. And the only reason why I know that is because when Len walked in, I asked, what are your pronouns? And they had expressed to me, and I was like, okay, I want to make sure I don't sound stupid on camera. I don't disrespect you. I want to make sure that I'm learning, I'm understanding. Remember to always ask if you're not sure a person's pronouns, because you never know what they, he, she, him may go by. So let's go ahead and start with an icebreaker. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Lynn.
That's a good question. What would you like to know?
Let's see. When did you come out? And when did you or fully come out and told everyone that this is my pronoun, this is what I go by, and this is me?
Okay, so I transitioned about 6.5 years ago when I turned 40. So I am a lot older than I look, which is a very common thing for me.
That is a good thing, though. Yeah, you look beautiful.
Well, thanks.
Yes.
But yeah, I transitioned. I started my transition when I turned 40. Changed my name legally, and then I had top surgery about 4 years ago. So I wouldn't say that my transition is over, but I think I'm in a really good place with myself. I feel like I'm a normal person. I don't feel like that I don't like my body or that I hate myself or all those things that I felt when I was younger. And so for me, I feel like I'm in a really good place now.
That's amazing. And I know that transition is not easy at all, and it's not short.
Right.
It's really
sometimes it's never ending.
Yeah.
For some folks, it can be, a constant daily thing. And so, knowing that with any transgender person, no transition is the same. It's going to be unique to that person. So, and it depends on their transition and what they can afford, what kind of support that they have, that kind of thing.
What they have access to, all those,
right.
Great things.
So I do a lot of education around trans work. I do a lot of education around LGBTQ issues in my job. And so I'm constantly trying to find ways that I can educate people, because I may be the first person who is trans that they've ever met. So I want to make sure that experience is a good experience, and that they know that we're just like everybody else.
Yeah.
We're normal, and yeah.
And you guys, I'm sure you met my friend Brittany. She was on here before, and she's also identified as a transgender female, if I said that correctly. But I'm glad I have Len here with me, because she's going to educate me, and she's going to educate you to learn about all the great many things when it comes to mental health. They, I want to cater their story to our theme, because I think that's, I was telling Len, I was saying, hey, let's focus on mental health. From your experience, like, what were the things that you've saw yourself having to try to get past what were some of the challenges when you were going through that you yourself have experienced with youth who are going through that same issue, but don't have the access and resource?
I think the biggest piece is first feeling like there's somebody else out there, that they're not alone, that it's just not them, that there are more people out there that can totally be a resource for them, that can totally be a mentor for them to kind of help them. And so I think when I go and I talk to youth, they'll say to me, wow, I'm glad there's somebody else out there. I feel like, I was just me and nobody else understands me. No one else gets me. I'm dealing with all of this gender dysphoria, which basically means they're grappling with how they feel about their body. They may feel like, they may not feel like this is their body, that they're in the wrong body. It just could be a number of things. And so dealing with that gender dysphoria is a really hard piece for teens. It's hard enough for teens anyway.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a teen, it was hard. But now being trans, it's even harder to be a teen. But people are talking about it. That's why we're here. We want to keep talking about it, so we let the youth know that there are people that are trans that can help support them, that can help guide them, and kind of help get them to the resources that they need.
So before I go ahead and jump to our next topic, what are some resources that we have here in town, or even in the state, that assist with people who are dealing with some mental issues or some not trans, but gender dysphoria? Dysphoria,
Yep.
excuse me. What are the resources? Who are the people that we can go to?
So that's been a tricky thing. So about 4 years ago, I started a center here in Bloomington Normal because we really didn't have a lot of resources for the LGBTQ community. We were hearing a lot of our trans folks were having to go up to Chicago to get their care, their mental health.
Yeah.
At one point in time, we did have a trans therapist in town, but then that person moved away.
Oh, no.
And so our resources were very minimal.
Yeah.
Right. And so in June of 2016, I started a youth group called Friends Like Us. And they still meet every week at the First United Methodist Church in Normal. And they really get to see and be a part of a community of LGBTQ youth led by either LGBTQ advisors or allies. So it's a really supportive and safe space for them. It may be their only safe space they get for the whole week.
Yeah.
So that's a really big resource. In my search of great allies in Bloomington Normal, I found that Project Oz is a great ally of ours. Project Oz does a lot for homeless youth. And so they help to find a homeless youth temporary living space. They may put them, if they're like 18, 19, they may help put them in a hotel so they can get back on their feet.
Go out
so
and
they really
do
go out and do that work. So Project Oz is a great resource
Yeah.
that we have in Bloomington Normal. We have a few mental health therapists in Bloomington Normal, but like one of them that does specifically youth, she's booked. So now,
which probably makes sense because
because we have all these resources.
Yeah.
And we have a few ally mental health professionals here, but when it really comes to, we have like one doctor here that's supportive. Then if you're on that 17, 18 line, then as far as healthcare, you've got Planned Parenthood and you've got a doctor. But for most of our trans youth and our trans adults, they travel to Chicago. So it's,
and that drive is not pretty.
No, and
let me tell you.
and it's hard to get, if you're working, it's hard to get off from work. It's hard to pay to get a train ticket.
Yeah.
It's hard to take time off from work. It's all of those resources. And so
that could be used for like other things, that
Exactly.
that could be used for things that would be more applicable in that sense.
Right,
If we had the
exactly.
resources right here.
So if we had the resources here, we had a centralized location, and that was kind of my hope when I opened the center, was that we would offer that mental health piece along with those social pieces, so we could do that. But things changed, and I went to Planned Parenthood, and so now I get to do amazing work with Planned Parenthood with trans individuals. And so talking about these pieces and understanding is really important, because a lot of organizations don't understand that there aren't a lot of resources here. They don't understand that you can't just say, oh, I'm trans and I need help, whether it's mental health or medical or even legal, and be like, oh, we can just go to this place. It's not that easy.
Yeah, it's not. You just can't just like, oh, like, it's not that white and black, really.
Right.
You know, there are gray areas in between. I think going back to creating spaces is the key word.
Right.
Len had mentioned is, if we have these spaces, it's a little more easier for people to just go there and be themselves, feel valuable, understand that they aren't this other, that they are a part of society.
Right.
And it sucks that we don't have that many resources, to be honest. It sucks, because it's like everyone's dealing with a battle, you know?
Right, exactly.
Or whatever that is.
And mental health right now, I think, is probably one of the areas that's very lacking in the United States. You know, mental health was such a huge stigma, and is still a huge stigma. And it's, as long as that continues to be a stigma, then things aren't going to change. Right? So we've got to keep talking about mental health and realize that anybody, no matter who they are, whether they're successful or whether they're not, whether they're young, whether they're old, can have a mental health issue. And so if we get to the point where we realize that just like anybody can get diabetes, or anybody can have a heart attack, or anybody can have a stroke, anybody can have a mental health crisis.
Yes.
And it may only last a week, it may last a month, it may be ongoing, but until we address those issues, it's not going to change. And so when I talk, so I also teach at Lincoln College here in town.
Oh, great. What do you teach?
I teach healthcare administration. So I'm teaching adult learners about the healthcare system. And a lot of what I talk about is I include these issues in the LGBTQ community, the mental health stigma, talking about healthcare altogether. And so hopefully, as we continue to have these conversations, things will start changing.
So not only do you have the experience,
right,
you have the education, and you're actually utilizing that piece. I love that, because I've been looking for like a doctor myself. I'm like changing. I'm like, it's so much work, but it's so rewarding at the same time to know that I can do it. I'm like taking my healthcare into my own hands. I'm doing my reapplication process with Dept, and I'm finding me a new doctor. But what I've learned in this past 2 weeks, 3 weeks in this process is there's not a gay doctor in Bloomington. It's hard to find one. And it's like, and if you do want one, you have to go to Chicago or Chicago like was the closest one I found, and then I looked up therapists, because I was like, okay, what are some LGBTQ plus friendly therapists or allies? There are allies, but I want someone who
part of the community.
Yeah, who knows that struggle, who knows, like, I understand what you are going through. Right,
exactly. And that's really important.
It is.
Allies are great, and I love our allies. We need more allies. We need more advocates helping us kind of get through those healthcare pieces and the mental health piece and that kind of thing. But sometimes when you're first starting with mental health, you want someone that you can say, gee, this person looks just like me, or this person's a part of the community. I feel like I can trust them because they understand my struggles more than maybe a cisgender person would understand, or someone that's heterosexual.
You tell our audience what a cisgender is, because you said it. Now you have to explain it too.
So cisgender is someone who is born a sex and identifies as that same sex for the rest of their life. So if they're born female, they identify as female. If they're born male, they identify as male. Someone who is transgender is born female or male and identifies either female, male, or neither, or both, or lots of other things. So it's not a cut and dry thing, but gender and sexuality, it's a spectrum. And so don't let anybody else tell you any differently, because that's how it is. And we've got to look at that spectrum as being anything, and anybody can be anything, sexual orientation or gender identity.
Yeah, it's just like the flag. It's a spectrum of colors.
Right.
It's endless. It can be endless, but if you do your homework, you'll learn.
It could be like a cosmos. You could put like a cosmos here in the screen.
Just a little screen like
cosmos.
I'm probably gonna do that. We're just like in space. We're the cosmos, and this is the endless spectrum of the LGBTQ plus A B C D E F G A B C D 1 2 3. I can only imagine how hard it must be for a youth or for someone who identifies as transgender, someone who doesn't identify as cisgender, to find someone who they can relate to when they want to talk about their anxiety, their depression, that transphobia that they're experiencing in the many realms of their lives.
Right.
It's heartbreaking, and I want to kind of figure out how can me, my audience, what can we kind of do to not just talk about it, but also create an environment where we all can exist and live in harmony. Really, it sounds cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think education first is really key. Is really understanding those specific pieces when it comes to trans and trans youth and what they're going through. So if you know a trans youth, but you're like, I'm not so sure, take the time to educate yourself.
Take the time.
Find organizations that are doing great work in trans youth or in transit in general. There are a plethora of resources on the internet and that's the funny thing is, I was talking to my spouse today about how social media and the internet, all those things we didn't have when we were younger.
Yeah.
And so now you have all of these things, and what a great resource that can really be. So educate yourself, learn about what it means to be a trans youth, be supportive. If a trans youth comes and talks to you, and you may not understand, you may not be trans, but you know what? Listening, being empathetic in your responses, and really just being a person that can listen and maybe help guide them. Because sometimes they don't have a supportive person in their life, and they're walking around this armor of junk that they're dealing with. Whether it's trauma at home, trauma at school, trauma in their neighborhood, trauma in their church. So they're dealing with all of these things. So they need someone that can help them take that armor off and really talk to them and listen to them and be there for them. As far as other resources, but yeah, so the Illinois Safe School Alliance has done a lot of work. So that's a great resource, but that's out of Chicago, and if we really need them, they can kind of help give us resources as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And there are some other friendly resources, PATH 211, that's a great resource that can help.
Does Prairie Pride can kind of help as well? I know they have a lot of resources.
That was my next one. Prairie Pride Coalition is another organization that's done great work in Central Illinois.
And they have really good information on their website.
And they have amazing information. They've been a great resource here for a very long time. So, yeah.
Think of the yellow pages, but on the internet.
It's like the rainbow pages, so to speak.
But I kind of wanted to go ahead and now branch into my primary focus, which is, of course, the mental health piece in the Bloomington area. What I've come to learn is there are spaces to be yourself, but I find it very difficult to do that. That makes sense. And I'm not sure if it's because there are a lack of maybe role models, there are a lack of leaders, there are a lack of resource groups, coalitions. I'm not entirely sure. I can't really put my finger on it.
So what I've found in the last 13 and a half years that I've been in Bloomington is there are a lot of us out there in the LGBTQ community, but we all do different things. We all have our hands in different projects, kind of thing. And so the goal for the center was to kind of get some of those folks together and get those folks that don't necessarily always come out to LGBTQ events or that kind of thing. And I don't understand why. I think it's because we've kind of become this, we've become a very accepting society of introverts. And so when you're you're introvert, like myself, I don't really go out to events. I don't really do a lot of things with the community. There aren't a lot of things to do, but I'm not one of those people that go to the bar or anything like that. So for me, and I think for some people, they want to see more supportive spaces in churches and schools and
stores.
Then that way you don't feel like it's just a single piece. It's great to be a part of the community, and it's great to have community resources. But you also want to be able to live your life and be accepted.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's kind of changed. I want to go wherever I want to go. I want to be supportive.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be supported by the folks that I hang out with, the people that I really spend time with. And so I kind of feel like I want people to be more accepted of the community.
Yeah, of the community.
And I think that maybe where the shift is, and I'm not an expert, and I can't really say that, my word is the community word, because that's not it. But, I came out in my 20s as a lesbian, and we had LGBTQ centers where I lived, and we had LGBTQ bars, and we had all of these things, and it was a great piece because we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
Well, we had groups and we wanted to be around folks in the community. Yeah. But now, people that are introverted, you can have your community or your resource right on the internet.
Right in your hands.
And I think that people don't need that as much as we did when we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media.
You're right, yeah.
So I think that now we've been out long enough, same-sex marriage is the land of the law at this moment. We want to just do things like normal people, LGBTQ folks have kids and families, and so they want to do stuff with others.
It's kind of evolved from being inside and being in the community, but now being recognized and being and having these families.
Exactly.
And,
and so when I go out and I want to do something, I don't want to have to worry about, I can only go to an LGBTQ event and I know I'm accepted. Now I can say, I can go out and, for the most part, go anywhere, hang out with any group, and be myself.
Be yourself.
And I think that's really the key.
And I think you really did hit the nail on the head, because that is, I think, one of the many pieces that play into Bloomington, I guess, really Bloomington Normal's level of, not tolerance, that's such a terrible word to use, but acceptance.
Yeah.
And recognition when it comes to us.
Right.
But at the same time, when you said that, it kind of flipped the switch in my head, and I'm like, okay, so if my community, it doesn't matter where I go, I'm going to be who I am, because the law of the land exists. People know that I'm queer because I'm literally recording myself talking about my life, so they know who I am. But I guess I'm not only just speaking for me, but I want to speak for the voices who may not feel comfortable or who aren't where I'm at, and I want to be able to not push them to where I'm at, but show them and let them know that they could be here, and they can be accepted in these spaces. But sometimes it's a mental block, I think, when it comes to that. So maybe some people aren't seeing that connection that they need to have with the community.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering, are the leaders not there? And the thing is, the leaders are there. The leaders are business owners. The leaders are
exactly. The leaders are
executives.
doing all those things, and the leaders are there. They're present,
Yep.
and they're the voice. Every time each person that you talk to in these videos, they're that voice of that person to kind of help further things along.
Yeah.
And so the leaders are there, but if the leaders show up but nobody else shows up, then it's just the leaders doing the work and that's it.
Yeah, and we're not getting anywhere with that if it's just the leader doing the work, you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the leaders do work and they continue to do work. And then they've been doing work for a long time and they're like, we need new leaders. We need young people to come in and kind of help guide us and help suggest us. And I think the youth are really driving some great things in the LGBTQ community. They're changing our languages. They're giving us new words. They're being more vocal about saying, I don't fit into this category or this category, so I want a new category. I want something new. And so I think the youth need to continue to drive that piece and keep speaking up and saying, hey, I want to see these things change.
Yeah.
And as they do, those things change.
Yeah.
Folks like me that educate other people about trans language or LGBTQ language, I use those pieces that our youth are really sharing and that they're changing and driving. And so I'm trying to teach people my age and older that we need to talk about these language and understand these words and understand these definitions. And
growing.
so it needs to keep
Never stop
happening.
learning. Yeah.
Exactly.
I can only imagine though, does that not get overwhelming though for some people where they're like, there's just too much and there's just a lot and I don't think I'll ever really learn this. Like I even felt that way. I'm gonna be honest, I felt that way where I was just like, okay, the thing is
it get overwhelming.
yeah, exactly. And I was just like, does anyone else feel this way? Because I feel like a lot of pressure and then like pressure, anxiety kicks in and all that crazy stuff. And it's like, we don't want that. So put it like, hit the like red stop button as soon as you start thinking like that. But what helped me turn that around was I was interacting with people who identified as these things that I didn't know. I'm a different type of learner. I need to interact. I need to visually see. I need to communicate.
Right.
I can read it online, but if I'm not given like actual example that I can apply within my life, it's nothing.
And I think that's very common for most people. And so when I do education pieces, I use several pieces of that education. I use a visual, PowerPoint presentation to kind of give them that visual. And then I talk about it and, explain different pieces. And there are some activities that I'll do where they have to write it. So then that way, if they're a visual learner, they can look at PowerPoint and see, oh, hey, okay, I can understand that. Okay, I'm still trying to get that. The picture's helpful. Kind of thing. If a person learns better by listening to folks and listening to what they have to say, then they can hear what I'm saying. And then if they're like, well, okay, I'm still a little confused, but if I write it down once or twice, then I've got it. Then you kind of work all those pieces. And I think that's really important when we talk about education, that we don't just put a PowerPoint presentation up and we talk about it and we're done. That we use all of those different learning styles for folks, because you just never know. And you may learn better visually and by listening or by writing and visually. And so it's just going to depend. And so as an educator, it's important that we do all those things.
What are some of the challenges you kind of see within the youth of the LGBT community when it comes to mental challenges?
I think the biggest piece is having that resource of a mental health provider. Knowing, we have social workers at Planned Parenthood, and they can spend a limited time with youth. We don't do hormone replacement therapy for anyone under 16. So that's the other piece as well. But younger teens can come in for STI testing and birth control, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
But I think having that resource, so they can see our social worker a few times and then referring them on. But the great thing about folks like me that work at Planned Parenthood is we're looking for resources in the community. So if we get a teenager that comes through and says, I'm dealing with these issues, can you help me? then we can kind of say, I've got this list of providers that are supportive.
Yeah.
And here they are. So if a teen comes to Planned Parenthood before they come to another organization or a healthcare provider,
It's like, bam, we got you.
then we can give them that reference.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of provide them with the next support so they can continue that ongoing mental health piece. Another organization in town that does mental health is Chestnut. Everybody knows about Chestnut. Chestnut is now, they are now a federally qualified health center.
Ooh.
So they offer
Chestnut.
sliding scale fees.
Congratulations.
And so they too should be supportive of the LGBTQ youth. I don't know where they stand right now specifically, so maybe that's a follow-up you could do at Chestnut.
Yeah.
Qualified health centers have to be supportive of the LGBTQ community because of federal funds. And as long as they're receiving federal funds, they have to know terminology, understand those pieces, that kind of thing. So that's a resource that is recent. And so when we think of FQHC in the LGBTQ community, we know that Howard Brown in Chicago is an FQHC, right? Because they offer sliding scale fee and all those things.
All the right things.
So does Chestnut. So that is another resource that I think
So like the Central Illinois, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
that
hopefully Chestnut will kind of see that we need more LGBTQ resources in the community. You know, I've spoken to them in the past when I was with the center, and hopefully we can kind of move towards that piece as well.
Send them emails, call them, do what you need to do. Reach out, because if they don't know that that's something that their community needs, and they're just kind of like, okay, well, we can learn, we can acknowledge, but if we're not telling them what we need and want, then how can they address those needs and wants if we can't communicate that?
Exactly. You know, and so, you know, when I was with the center, my goal was to really talk about and talk to places like Chestnut and Advocate Healthcare.
Funding, because you mentioned that, and I think that's such. I was doing my homework, and I was looking at the funding that the state had approved for the 2019 fiscal year for ADAP and all of the many different health programs within the state of Illinois, and like how much money is going to Chicago, and then how much money is going to the second part of Illinois, the second state of Illinois, if you will, which is Central, and everything else below Chicago, or Kankakee, if you will. And the numbers are crazy, like as far as the funding. And I'm not gonna ask you like how's that dictated, but like how is that dictated in Central, like in Bloomington?
Funding's an issue. Funding's a big issue. So I guess this is the way I look at it. So Chicago has a ton of people, right? I don't know what their population is, but let's just say it's at least 1 million.
Okay. Start with that.
And the rest of downstate is like, gosh, I don't even know.
Let's say like 500,000.
500,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So when people think funding, they're going to say, well, we have 500,000 people here and we have 1 million people here. So most of our funding is going to go to the larger population because obviously they need it, right? And so we're a smaller population downstate, and so we don't need as much funds, right? So then you take all of the counties in downstate Illinois.
I'm making that face come like,
and you separate it depending on how many people are in their county. And so let's say one county only has 50,000 people and another county has 200,000 people. Well, then again, the 200,000 people are going to get it. And so that's how funding works. And so
are we doing that in the like northern part of Chicago? Like where we're looking at different suburbs and subdivisions, and I believe so. Okay. And I'm not a funding expert. Yeah,
so
and I'm not gonna.
I can't be the expert on funding.
You're probably like, Dion, slow down.
That's kind of the nature of the beast.
Yes.
The money's going to go where there are more people. And so if we're in a urban area of Chicago, obviously they're going to get more money than a little downstate McLean County, Bloomington Normal.
Charleston, possibly, or Carbon. Carbon might get a good chunk.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. There's some counties here in Illinois that only have like 50,000 people in it. So they're not going to get, and they're going to see little resources. They're going to have to go to bigger cities like Bloomington Normal or Peoria or Springfield or Champaign, Urbana.
This is their Chicago, essentially. Yeah.
Illinois is a huge state, and when you have one little blip of the state has 1 million people in it, and the rest of the land has 500,000, then obviously that money's going to go to that one spot.
Yeah.
And it can be very frustrating. That's the one thing I learned when I moved to Central Illinois was this disconnect between Chicago and Downstate.
Downstate, yeah.
But then when you start looking at the numbers and the population, it's like, okay, so I can understand this, even though I don't feel like it's fair, and you don't feel like it's fair because we really need the resources down here. But when you
the whole
think
damn
about
state
it,
could use a lot of the damn
Right.
resources. I would like to see not just a population-based funding, but maybe a needs-based funding and kind of like looking at reports.
I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix of, population and needs.
And needs, okay, okay. I feel a little bit, okay.
There are a
really
lot
good
of
about that.
numbers, especially with STIs and HIV and those pieces. They can say, well, we've got 1 million people and we have this many infections. We've got, so many people in Bloomington Normal, you only have 100 and some infections. They look at those pieces. It's it's kind of that population and need piece.
A need piece, okay.
But again, it's frustrating because we feel like we really need resources down here. We really feel like we need more things in Central Illinois for us.
If not even just like incentives where we can incentive or create programs where we reward youth or people, young audience, like you said, to get them to get on board. And that might play into the funding where because we don't have that, we aren't able to really share or sell that part, so we can get people like myself involved in these issues and say your voice matters. You have key leadership behaviors. We want you to we want to invest in you in any way we can, and sometimes people my age, they want that investment, and when they get it, they either are deterred by it, they run with it.
But it's important, and we need to keep speaking up. We need folks to continue to speak up, and that's why it's really important that we continue that education piece, that we keep saying we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough of this. Because when leaders, for-profit leaders or even non-profit leaders say, well, I'm not really hearing any issues with youth about this. Speak up, because they need to hear you. Just like speaking up to your state representative or your senator. Or it's important that you talk to those people in leadership. They may not change. You may not be able to change their mind today. You may not change their mind tomorrow, but if you constantly are talking to them and your friends are talking to them and those friends are talking to them, then they're hearing the voice, they're hearing those things. And that's how we change the mind of our politicians. We change the minds of our leaders. And people really say, I need to change this. When you get done with your college education, you can go and say, I want to work for this great organization, but I want to share, this is what we need in this program.
Yeah.
You're doing great work, but we need to add this.
Not being
for
afraid
this.
to say that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep speaking up. Don't be afraid to speak up. You may get shoved aside, you may get the stink eye, you may get the roll of eyes,
side eye, all that.
Still keep speaking up.
Yes.
Don't stop. Don't stop.
And I think we need to get comfortable with not being comfortable. That's such a key thing, because it's like, oh God, I don't want to say this because what if they take it in this way, in this manner? But if you're saying it from a place of criticizing, but critiquing in a way that it's good critique, or you can add to the program, I think it's healthy.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to be comfortable. I always find myself in a lot of those situations when I'm at work. And it's because it's I'm afraid that people might take that the wrong way, but it's no, but this is an issue though, and if it's not addressed, we just go suffer. I would at least be able to leave wherever I'm at better than when I came to it.
Yeah, and our large corporations, they need to hear those things.
Yes.
They need to hear those things, right? Yeah.
And I'm going through this crazy battle with like my FMLA at my job because this is my third time. I'm gonna try it again, third time's a charm, that I submitted for FMLA because I'm HIV positive. Some days when I get sick, I'm just sick. I'm no use to nobody, not even my dog. So like, and when I get sick, I'm not covered by that. And it got denied twice. I'm like, how's this getting denied? Like, what's going on here? I'm like, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's HIV positive in my work environment.
Right.
So let me figure out what they're doing. Let me talk. Let me communicate. Find those people. Find employee resource groups and be like, hey, who the hell is HIV positive and can help me out? Because I am struggling. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not sure, but I need help. SOS.
That's another topic that you could talk about is being HIV positive in workplaces and workplace LGBTQ discrimination. That's a great topic. Yeah, so that's really important when we talk about mental health in general. Mm-hmm. We need to have a little bit more leniency when it comes to that. If you're under the doctor's care and you have a note from the doctor saying that you're being treated for mental health, anything, mm-hmm. then your employer should be able to work with you.
Should work with you. I agree.
You know, I can understand if you call into work every day and you say, I just don't feel like getting out of bed. Okay, so that's totally different, right?
That's more of a severe,
you're dealing with, any type of depression, whether you're dealing with intergender dysphoria, any of those things, and you're under a doctor's care, if you can take it to your job and say, here, I'm having a rough time. I'm sorry I didn't come in yesterday, but I'm seeing a doctor. That organization should be supportive of you. Mm-hmm. But you'll have to also in turn do your best to not abuse that particular privilege.
Yes.
So it's important that we as employers really look at those pieces when it comes to mental health. Because again, like I said before, mental health is a stigma. And so until we get past the point where it's not a stigma, then it's hard to see these things change.
Yeah, I agree. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. There will be more interesting conversations to be had about mental health here on screen, but it's so much easier nowadays to take action, make those issues known, because we live in the world of internet where I can talk to someone across the universe or 2 states over and they're having the same issue and we can get together and then another person can get together. Like, it's so easy. But I just want you guys to know what resources are here in Bloomington.
The last other resource I think people forget about nationally is NAMI. So they're a great organization and they are LGBTQ friendly because I asked specifically for Illinois. So know that organization.
She did a plug. They just gave you guys a plug, okay?
It's a great organization.
Yes.
Yeah. And they're doing great things, and so you can support them with suicide walks and those kind of things. So
awesome. Yeah. So yeah, guys, don't forget there are many resources out there for you. Again, I am Dusty Lion, and this is
Len.
Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and as always, stay hopeful in victory. And remember, if you want to break stigma, not just HIV stigma, but stigma in general, it starts with that one awkward conversation that may lead to a mutual understanding or a resolution. As always, guys, stay hopeful in victory. Bye.
Bye.